charge of the Secular Student Alliance and the Secular Coalition for America and a number of other secular organizations. And I will add that he is not merely a figurehead on those advisory boards. He actually gives advice, and often when we ask for it, sometimes it comes other times too. But we often ask for it as well. And I also had the pleasure this year of spending a week with Todd as a counselor at Camp Quest, Ohio, and he was a counselor at Camp Quest, South Carolina the year before. So that was awesome. As did Craig and John and Rita, if you're in the audience. So Todd is definitely interested in getting down in the weeds and getting dirty and getting interesting things done. And I want you to join me in welcoming him to the stage to talk about welcoming Thomas Jefferson to our movement.
All right, can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, excellent. I'm going to disregard microphones and moving podiums because if I lean out, I'll just chuck it right off the stage. Crush a few people in the front. It's always a bad way to start your presentation, so don't kill your audience members. Welcome. I'd like to talk to you about welcoming Thomas Jefferson, and notice there is a question mark on there because I'm not really here to give a lot of answers. I'm actually here to ask some questions and ask maybe some questions we haven't really thought about a lot or really haven't talked about a lot as a movement. So first of all, we're going to use Thomas Jefferson as an example of the nuns, if you will, and talk about, do we want him? Do we want people like him? Who do we want and why, and will they feel welcome? And most of it get you thinking, and part of the reason I don't have the answers is because every group is different. Whether it's an off-campus group, an on-campus group, depending on the school, depending on the location, every group is different. So the answers, frankly, might be different for each different person in this room to some of the questions we'll ask. Feel free to ask questions as I go. Jump right in, raise your hand. You can yell buzz if you really want to. It's really enthusiastic. And don't feel it's personal if I interrupt you, because it's my job to manage the clock, not yours, so it'll be my job to be rude and hush you if it's going too long. So with that, let's rock and roll. The nuns are more than just atheists, if you can imagine that. It would be nice, but it is not so. Sometimes they tote guns. I always thought this was funny with, I think the first time I saw that picture was something talking about Muslims dying in martyrdom and winning 72 virgins and one of their prisoners with rifles and habits on. So, interesting stat. Go back to 2008, which is the only one I've been able to find that has both identity, so I am an atheist, I am a Christian, matched with actual belief. Only 7% of the famous nun stat are atheists. Boo. Now, that's 15% of the population of the nuns in 2008, which is the last time these data were combined in one study. Since then, most recent data in 2012 goes to the 20% that Jamila is quoting, and I will refrain from saying whether or not that data is accurate or not, but it did jump to 20% in just 4 years, which is pretty sweet. And that number is an amazing 32% for 18 to 24-year-olds. Not like anybody in this room would know anything about that. Of the 15% back in 2008, and actually of the whole 100%, they asked the question, regarding the existence of God, do you think, and of that nuns, that 15%, a whopping 27% said, oh my God, hell yeah, I believe in God! And those are the nuns.
What?
Yes, those are the nuns, the famous nuns they talk about in the media. 27% have a belief in a theistic God. Now, something I want to draw your attention to, because we're going to ignore them in this presentation, is the rest of the nuns. Only 7% say there are no gods. That's about 1% of the population identifying as atheists, and also roughly around 1% actually having an atheistic belief. According to this study, agnostics, 35%. Huge. 5 times the size of the atheist category, according to belief. Deists, there is a higher power that doesn't necessarily answer your prayer, or is not personal, 24%. And then the very fun, I refuse to answer your question. Will not do it. So I just wanted you to have a look at this because I want you to think in terms of what makes up your group and how much more might be out there that you don't have in your group right now relative to populations. So what about Mr. Jefferson here, about to talk to Lisa Simpson, very lonely man. Here's some quotes from Jefferson. Jefferson was a deist. I will not read them all to you. I will read just one. These accounts are to be settled only with him who made us, and to him we leave it, with charity for all others, of whom also he is the only rightful and competent judge. This does not sound like an atheist. This is a man who clearly believes in a creator, and a creator who may even be doing some judging someday. He is a Unitarian and believes that America will someday quickly rally to the idea of there being no Trinity and adopting the doctrines of Jesus, which he was somewhat unique in his views of what Jesus stood for. But the man is certainly no religious fundamentalist. He was an accused atheist. He was accused of this by his political enemies who tried to use this against him to bump him out of political races, such as for the president, which he eventually became. He literally, and here's a photo of the chopped up Bible, where he took his clippings, he literally cut out the miracles and divinity of Jesus right out of the Bible. So when he speaks of the doctrines of Jesus, he is not speaking in the terms of your fundamentalist pastor. He says, I am a real Christian. That is to say, a disciple of the doctrines of Jesus. He was a Christian in terms of the ethics of Jesus. They turn the other cheek, to be peaceful, to be loving, love your neighbor, etc. He says we should question the mystical generation of Jesus and toss it out with Minerva. And we should question with boldness even the existence of God, because if there be one, he must more approve the homage of reason than that of blindfold fear. That is an awesome quote. The man is a deist, and really, the man is a free thinker. And according to Cam Quest's new definition of free thinker, a free thinker is one who forms opinions on the basis of reason independent of authority, especially one who doubts or denies the religious dogma. So I'd like you to think about this for a moment. Would your group be welcoming to Thomas Jefferson? Would your group want a dyed-in-the-wool deist, someone who believes in a creator deity in your group?
You've never heard of Darwin.
This is true. Now, post-Darwin, he might be a full-out atheist. But there are still deists today. Yes, question, yeah.
No, I just wanted to add, I mean, at the time, he was working with the fullness of his knowledge. That was the top level of knowledge because they didn't know Darwin.
I fully agree with this very large asterisk. The man had certain things not available to him at the time. He did not have Darwinian theory, for example. He did not have germ theory or Watson and Crick or all sorts of other things that very well may have led him further down the path. That said, there are still many deists today, roughly 24% of the population in the United States of America. So a deist of the time is still an interesting potential example because there are deists in your schools right now.
You mean 24% of the nuns or 24% of the US?
Sorry, thank you for the correction. 24% of the nuns are deists. Thank you. I have the other stat later on. So deist is still a very large segment, particularly of the nuns. So would your groups want deists in there? Would they want agnostics? And what makes up your groups today? And then, of course, would someone like Jefferson or today's deist be turned off by your group today and the way it operates and the things people say? So let's look at segmentation for a moment. Matt.
A quick kind of amendment to your asterisk. When we look back at the Founding Fathers, one of the things that I always try to do is remember that you can find quotes from me when I was a Christian. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to go back and look at the quotes and put them in a timeline to see if there's a progression and put them in context. Because Jefferson at point A may not be Jefferson at point B.
Right. The Jefferson of the more deistic, more questioning ilk is the later Jefferson, who became much more skeptical of religion as time went on. And so the Bible chopping exercise was done after his presidency, kind of in his later retirement years, and really never meant for public consumption. But that is true. You can definitely cherry pick quotes, which of course I did cherry pick some, but I picked some from both sides. If you actually go to the Monticello website, it has a whole page on his religiosity, which has fantastic quotes of different types. I only took a couple of the more interesting ones. So segmentation. This is a segmentation square with lots of small print, which maybe you can read back there. So running across the top, the beliefs. This is coming right out of that American Religious Identification Survey result. I have both the full U.S. population, which, thank you, Amanda, is 12% deist for the whole U.S. adult population, and 24% amongst the nuns. So we have atheists, we have the hard and soft agnostics who either believe it is unknowable for there to be a God or they are not sure. We have, again, our favorite don't knows. I broke out the deists because there's definitely non-religious deists and then there are more religious deists. We don't have the data breakdown, but I do see them as different groups. And then for the theists who believe in a personal God they pray to, I again broke them down into the moderates and the more rigid. That used to say fundies, but I was recommending not to say fundies. And then running down this side, for your consideration, are behaviors. Now, I've run this in various ways before. You can also run this based on needs. So what does your audience need from you? Maybe they need validation of belief. Maybe they need an opportunity to go out and do charitable work and service. Maybe they just need a community to be a part of. That is a valuable exercise as well. In this case, I wanted to go with behaviors because what I think we might want to start considering more of in the movement and spend more time thinking about is not just the beliefs of the people that we want as part of our communities, but also the behaviors of those people. And I'll admit some of these aren't exactly behaviors because I cheated a little bit, such as...
Sex, joy, and humor. Likes buttered toast.
Exactly. So, rejects dogma. Seems like something we would reasonably want within our group. Updates opinions based on new information, things along those lines. Here is a potential segmentation of our market. So, don't knows, atheists, agnostics, and the non-religious deists. Essentially, these are the truly non-religious people in theory. Those are the free thinkers, probably. I'm sure there's some outliers or people who didn't understand the questions. These, the ones that claim to be non-religious but believe in God. These are free thinkers. And what I'd like to suggest is you not necessarily think these are the people for your group, but you consider whether or not you want them in your groups. Things like seeks joy and humor, the fun people. This is not just a strategic question, it's also a social question. Who do you want to be hanging out with? Who do you want to be socializing with? Who is fun to be with? Is it just the atheists? Maybe. But sometimes atheists accept reincarnation. And yes, it is true. I was recently contacted by a, quote, spiritual person who wanted to cross-promote each other's organizations. And this sounded interesting in theory until he sent me something about his beliefs, which explained that he believes evolution is not through natural selection. Evolution is via reincarnation, where each generation is reborn slightly more advanced than the next generation. So I politely refused to promote his ideas, but said we can be allies, we can be friends, we can work on similar causes, we can fight for church-state separation, but he's probably not the type of person who's going to be a member of our community. How about people who treat other people poorly? And I'm not talking about people who treat ideas with disrespect, because ideas don't deserve respect. People, on the other hand, should be treated with kindness. And they may be misguided. I certainly know several who think I am. People who do not treat others well, I would say, maybe don't have a great place in our, maybe in the movement, but not necessarily in our communities or groups. And that's a question I put to you folks for your groups as well, is, are those the people you want in your groups? And then, of course, we have, all right, there we go. We have, what do you folks think? Pop quiz, pop survey, I guess. Atheists, agnostics, deists, if they treat people poorly, do you want them in your group?
No.
That was easy. Yeah.
What do you mean by treat people poorly?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to get into a philosophical debate of what is good or bad.
I do.
Do they think women are people? If they, for example, well, if I was around in 1964, I would not have voted in the Civil Rights Act of 1965. It is up to the business to decide who will serve at his place of, you know.
I think I'm more talking I think I will let each of you decide what it is not treating people well. People who are mean, people who are cruel. Are you volunteering as someone who treats somebody poorly?
I do. I wasn't volunteering myself in that way. I think that who you are referring to are those who are wholly unnecessarily vitriolic in the blogosphere. Would that be correct?
I wasn't referring to any specific group, but if that is up for a candidate, yes, definitely the obnoxious trolls who like to cause conflict, hatred, and infighting.
/ atheism.
Those would definitely be right up there. I don't have a lot of time or patience for people who treat each other like crap, are mean just for the fun of it, and frankly, I think a significant issue for the entire movement is some of what's happening on the internet and blogosphere. When I go online, I want to enjoy myself, I want to learn something, I don't want to be pissed off every time I go to your blog or every time I read something on the internet. So yes, some of those people in the comment sections, yes.
I think that one of the things is the overlap between people that treat people poorly where they are and don't improve versus updates opinion with new information. Because I know when I first became an atheist, I had been a fundamentalist, and I was not a feminist at all. I didn't have the first clue how to listen to women, for example. And I'm better about shutting up.
Absolutely, and I do think this, if doesn't improve, is really a key here, because we do need to help each other along. A lot of us come out of religious environments, and we may be pissed off when we first get out and not really sure how to handle it or how to do things, and that's part of the reason groups like Recovering from Religion exist, is to help people in that transition. And some people might come out bitter, but in time we hope people do treat each other friendly. Of course, over here we have potential allies, the people who are jerks and believe crazy stuff. I would consider our enemies, if you will. And then, of course, we have the fictional characters, the fundamentalists who reject dogma. So, things to consider, things to discuss this weekend. You have time among yourselves, you have time to talk to new people. So, I would suggest not only here, but back with your campus groups, to actually think really hard about this nuns, the 32% of 18 to 24-year-olds. Who are the members of your community now? Do you have atheists? Do you have agnostics? Do you have deists? Who are they? And who do you want? And again, back to the point, both strategically, are you harnessing only a small portion of the nuns on your campus? And should you be harnessing more? And the answer may be no. Maybe they wouldn't fit in. Maybe they wouldn't work well with what you're doing today. But also socially, who do you want involved? And what would they want to feel more welcome? And are you being welcoming to them now? And remember, nobody is a perfect skeptic. Everyone has faults in their thinking. A lot of us are on our journey of skepticism, and it is a lifelong journey to bump out different false potential beliefs and superstitions. I still tell my wife I love her every time we go up on an airplane, and you know what? Is it superstitious? Yes. Am I going to stop doing it? Nah. Let's not rely on criticizing those religious ideas, but let's still treat those people kindly, because those who are less perfectly skeptical are much more likely to become more skeptical if they're treated with love and maybe have a little bit of opportunity to hang out with us and learn what it's like to be a skeptic.
Here, here.
20 minutes, so. Wow, lots of questions. That was the first one I saw right there.
If we imagine an organization that wants to include anyone that will show up, it seems to me there are also limits on how wide of an umbrella you can have, because people that want to be more activists may be upset if you aren't doing enough activism, but people that want to be less activist will be upset if you do any activism. So where are the theoretical limits, as opposed to what we might choose to do or what the leaders might choose to do?
I think, going right back to the beginning, it's going to really depend on your group and what your group is about. So if you're doing a Sunday service, for example, for the wider community, you're probably going to want to cast a broader net. You're probably going to want deists, atheists, agnostics, as many different people. You might even want liberal Christians in, hoping that maybe they'll enjoy it, fit in, or someday deconvert, if you will. If you're mostly a hardcore atheist activist group, you might not want deists in there. You might be, of course you'd be friendly to them, but they might not fit in because they might not be wanting to go out and debunk creationism or help educate people on atheist values. So I think it's going to totally depend on the group. And yeah, there's definitely going to be situations where you're going to want a small segmentation. You're going to want a relatively small, tight group. It depends on how you define your group. Secular student alliance groups in general by the name secular are theoretically potentially going to be broader. If you're an American atheist chapter, you're probably going to be narrower. American atheists probably aren't going to be targeting a lot of agnostics and certainly not a lot of deists. So it really depends on the group. Did that answer the question? Excellent. I think I saw your hand next.
Okay. With regard to being charitable towards other people, I'm not sure if this is a question or remark, but I'd like to hear you reply to it as well. I think
I will reply to your remark.
Okay. I feel like the charity should only extend so far, and there should be a comprehensive and individual analysis of each situation and whether or not the person is worth any more turning other cheeks, if you will.
I think that's mostly fair. I think it definitely depends on the situation, and certain people do just kind of... I try to be a diplomat most of the time, but there are certain situations where I just cannot help stirring the pot because it's just too much fun, and they set themselves up for it too much. So for the most part, I'm an advocate of diplomacy, but really I'm an advocate of you doing what fits best with you. Some people are more the firebrand type, and that's the role they should just keep doing, if that's what fits best with you. I'm an advocate of a lot of different roles and whatever fits best for you. That said, I think if it comes down to a debate or it comes down to an argument, taking the high road and being the person who doesn't look like they're beating up on someone else is going to make you look better. If you just start kicking someone when they're down or act like a jerk to someone or become obnoxious and over the top, the audience and the people watching are going to turn against you. You're going to start losing value in what you're saying because people aren't going to respect you. And it's just going to make you look bad and atheists look bad or nuns look bad in general. So it definitely is situational, but just remember, people might be watching and they might be forming their opinion of non-religious people by watching you and how you treat others. And if you fall into their stereotype, you might have just reinforced negative stereotypes that aren't deserved.
Immediate reply, others and not ideas, is the important distinction.
Again, yeah, others, not ideas. Ideas free for all, and if people think it's personal, tough.
So on that note, for people whose religion is a very large part of their identity, is there still a distinction between disrespecting their ideas and disrespecting them as individuals?
There is to me. There might not be to them, and that's somewhat unfortunate, but at least in my mind, we can't hold back on criticizing ideas. We can maybe be a little nicer about it at times, depending on the audience, but to me it's not a defense. It's like, well, that's my identity, you're offending me. Well, maybe you shouldn't have wrapped your identity in fiction. I saw up here earlier, I think right here. Oh yeah.
What are you talking about on your podcast?
Oh, what do I talk about on my podcast? It's the American Humanist Association's podcast. And we talk about all sorts of stuff. It's usually, it's a monthly show. We talk about a little bit about current events, and then we have a monthly guest, somebody like Sean Carroll, or we had Julian Galiff a few months ago. We're about to have Kat the Pollitt this month, and we just talk to them about what they're up to, what they're excited about, and try to ask them some interesting, fun questions and things along those lines.
Cool.
Your last bullet point reminded me of being in a young, new group, and I don't, this is isn't a question either, but this is something that I'd like to share with all the people that I met today who are part of brand new SSA affiliates, which is that in that last bullet point he talks about you may meet someone that's not perfectly secular, but after time hanging out with you, they might become that way. When we started our group, we didn't really have a clear mission statement other than to match what the SSA was. So we just wanted to get 10 people to come to our room at the time that it was scheduled. So our net had to be wide. We had to have everyone who was not like black or red on that chart. We wanted all of them to come. And so some of them came and I'm Catholic, and then 2 years later, they were hardcore atheists. And some of them were really activisty. Ben was one of them. He was super activist. And then some of them, like me, I'm more social, not so much about politics, but I love to get people together. And so by throwing a wide net while you're still a new group, you can figure out what you want. You can get a diverse base. You don't have to decide necessarily right away. And you can make sure that you're not singling out people that might be valuable to you. So that's just a message to new groups who don't already have a really established mission statement, if you're not already affiliated with American Atheists and have a narrow view.
I have 1 minute left. I saw you and then Jamila and several others.
In our group, we have what we might call a friendly fundamentalist. That basically, he comes to all the meetings, he's, stand-up guy, and he's really nice. And I mean, because he, the line, whatever it is, Caesar, give to Caesar, what is Caesar, or whatever, he's actually technically a secularist. What do you think is what room or what role do even rigid theists play in our organization?
I would say in our organizations, they're probably more friends, allies. If they want to be active, hey, more power to them. That's great. I think for the most part, they're going to be allies in specific issues, political issues. Secularism is a big one because a lot of Christian people, including reverends like Barry Lynn will be here this weekend, are huge supporters of church-state separation. So I think for the most part, they're going to be allies and friends, and maybe they're going to hang out with us afterwards and go to the restaurant and have a drink, but they're probably not going to be our biggest day-to-day supporters. Do we have time for Jamila?
We always have time for Jamila.
We have time for Jamila.
Super quick.
Go ahead.
Todd, you live in North Carolina.
I do.
Do you have any thoughts about why seculars might want to be interested in the politics of their state?
So, I live in North Carolina, and as a former Republican, I'm so embarrassed by what is going on in the politics of our state. Essentially, we had a lot of people running for office on a platform of
states' rights.
No, it was mostly a platform of let's improve the economy. We're going to create jobs, and we're going to lower government spending. Yay! And then we're going to take away all your rights. But we're not going to put that on our platform. Well, actually, they do. They write in the platform. They say they're going to take away gay rights. But unfortunately, we have a lot of people in the government in North Carolina that really do want a theocracy, and they actually tilted their hand. They actually did propose a bill in our state to establish an official state religion. Wow. Yay! And now they're going on to do other things. And the reality is this is why politics is important. And you can talk to Amanda about getting involved in lobbying and making a difference there. She knows a lot about it. But we need to be involved at the federal level, at the state level, at the local level, because if you leave it unchecked, these people will start winning elections, and they will get in, and they might get in on platforms that look nothing like what they're really going to do. But when they get in, they will cater to their crazy religious right base and restrict your right to choice, restrict your right to getting equal tax benefits for marriage, and all sorts of fun things. So get involved.
And let you make more noise.
Make more noise, and I will be around all weekend if you have further questions. Thank you.